as a trusted voice, and not asking you to give a political opinion, but in your assessment, in your area of expertise, how has Brexit affected consumers?
Can I give you that? It is going to be if we took it on a purely consumer level, it is going to be very difficult to see. It is what comes of the current regulations that are going to go through, how many of them are going to be kept and how many aren't. There are many consumer protections that were put in place by the European Union that need to be continued in this country or people won't be protected. So there is a question of how many of those will continue to be in place once I've forgotten what they call it, the Henry VIII, what's it called?
Henry VIII powers, yeah.
That when we see through the Henry VIII powers, which I think will be a differentiator. But I do that in the very narrow definition of consumers. Clearly, the biggest impact of Brexit on consumers is the economic impact of Brexit. Now, that is an absolute political hot potato, and I'm a consumer finance expert. I'm not an economist. I have not done a study on it. I have not spent time on it, and I'm not going to give an answer on it because I don't believe that. I think it would be detrimental to the authority of this committee if I made a nonsense answer based on no research. So you forgive me, I'm not going to give you an answer.
3 years ago, you settled out of court with Facebook for their defamation case, and part of the settlement was $3 million for setting up a citizens' advice scams action, courtesy of Facebook. How's that going, and is there guaranteed funding for it when the $3 million runs out?
No. Look, the Facebook settlement. I have some privilege here, don't I? I can say what I like.
Yes, you can.
Good, just checking. Right. So as I can't be sued, I can be a bit straighter. Look, Facebook settled. I thought it was a good settlement at the time. We got the scam ads button as well as the £3 million. I had been legally advised if I'd gone through and won, I might have got 50 grand. So I thought 3 million to charity, and I was always going to give it to charity. I'd declared that from the start. And the scam ads button was actually a really significant victory. I am very disappointed at how many scam ads still happen on Facebook. I think the scam ads button has not worked nearly as well. I don't think the resources have been put in. I think Citizens Advice Scam Action is going to end up with no funding soon because I have met the other big tech companies and frankly they are not interested in funding the victims of scams which they are culpable parties to, in my view. The number of those scams, the torrent of scams that are consistently out there, the number of IT experts who say they could write code in 5 seconds to get rid of them. It is simply a question of resource. These are multi-billion pound companies. And when I went to meet them, the first presentation they gave me was an hour-long, and I've always wanted to say this, so it's nice to be able to do it. It was an hour-long presentation, and they start on the technical difficulties of dealing with scam ads. After 3 minutes, and this was in a legal meeting, I said, stop. I'm not interested in your technological bollocks. Right, what I want...
So you can't say...
I apologise for my language, Chair. I will take it back. I'm not interested in your technological balderdash, baloney, or any other B words. If you can't solve it technically, then you need to solve it manually. Then every single advert that you print, that you put on here, should simply be taken down manually. The issue of your technology and the idea that you have defined as having to have a technological solution to scams that destroy people's lives, mental health and finances and leave people in a hideous situation and are absolutely incredibly destructive. The idea that it has to be a technological solution is simply wrong. If you can't, this is a function of your profits. You're going to have to take a hit to the income that you have, which is enormous and vast. And so I refuse to accept that. But, you only have... Look, I am one person, and I met a very senior member of government about this, who said to me before this, we're very glad you are taking this case, because we think it's easier for you to do that than for us to regulate on how to stop this, which I was really frustrated by. I thought it's very nice of you to take the risk with my person and my personal having to take the risk. But as the face it was happening to all the time, I had to find a way to stop it. I should just note on record, this was not about me, and the terms of the settlement always had to involve stopping all scam ads with trusted faces, not just scam ads with me and with trusted faces. And I think government has abrogated its responsibility over the last 5 to 6 years with this continued amount of scams. And yes, we have the online safety bill, which will not cover all scam ads, but it is far better. And that's going to come in when? 2024, 2025 in practical terms? And how many people are going to be scammed in the meantime? I sued Facebook, settlement was 3 years ago. The case started way before that. The scam ads started way before that. And perhaps, as we're here on trust, maybe part of the trust is I pulled my finger out and did it off my own back. And this House and Parliament is still dilly-dallying over getting something that is transparently in the public interest, stopping scam adverts to vulnerable people, and it still hasn't been done 3 years later, and it probably won't be done for another 2 years, which probably is where the lack of trust might well come from and the frustration from the public.
Have you ever experienced anyone who tries to imply that you're not a trusted source?
All the time, of course.
From
social media all the time. Look, there is no one...
But anyone in government or anyone...
I'd be slightly careful about... I was informed that somebody recently who was doing this and who was casting aspersions and making defamatory comments about me. I was informed by a newspaper. Part of my problem is some of the comments were so without... I didn't even understand the point of saying them. I didn't want the newspaper to print those comments because, of course, if you say, let's make something up, I'm an arsonist, there we go, I'm not an arsonist. If you say, I was accused of being an arsonist, but of course that's not true, then what people go, there's bound to be something in it. It's probably started a fire somewhere. So in the end, the story wasn't printed because the news agenda moved on. But yes, I have had people in senior levels, members of government, cast aspersions over the level that I can be trusted.
What do you think the motive for that would be?
Well, the motive on this one was pretty clear because they thought that what I was saying was not in the interests of the person they were promoting for a leadership campaign.
Good morning. I'm fascinated by the slight dichotomy that you said in I think the answer to the first question, that you're biased and you accept that you have biases, that we all have biases, and yet being interviewed, even when you're being interviewed as a campaigner, you are treated as an oracle by programmes, things like the Today programme. I've heard you being interviewed, and they don't challenge you in a way they would challenge any of us or even more government minister. Does that, in an odd way, worry you that everything you say is taken as sort of tablets of stone, even when you are expressing a bias?
So I'm not sure I agree with the premise that I'm not challenged, and I have felt challenged on many occasions when I've given interviews. However, remember, my bias is declared and open, and I am introduced as somebody who is comes from a consumer perspective. So if you take it within that perspective, people know what I'm arguing. And I'm quite careful when I'm asked questions about so people, they will always, if I'm talking about energy, they will always ask me about the energy supply situation. What's going on in international energy markets? And my answer is, I don't know, I'm not an expert. Now, that's probably something I can do that you can't do. I can simply say, it's not my subject area. I'm not going to give you an answer because I don't believe it's appropriate to do so. I'm not sure where the challenge would necessarily come from because I'm not a politician. They don't have to push the other side with me. I am coming from a consumer perspective. If they want to argue what the impact on business is, I would happily answer that. But I think that my definition of bias is bias on a pro-consumer basis. So I'm coming from a very specific and declared agenda basis. So I'm not sure what the challenge necessarily is on that, apart from to say, well, you're not representing business and the economy. Well, I'm not, and I'm not suggesting I would. If I were to come out tomorrow and say I'm Tory, Lib Dem, Green, SNP, Plaid Cymru, and any others you want to name, let's not, right? And say I think you should vote that way, instantly everybody who does not think that way would discount my opinion. And I think the right way to be, and to be fair, I have not voted for the same party at every general election in my lifetime. So I'm not tribal. I'm not a member of a party. I try and do what I do from a level of independence and lack of bias. Although, as I always say, that is not a perfect art. And I think if I did, I'd instantly lose any trust that people have. And it has been very difficult over this last year when I felt I had to stick my head above the political parapet on energy. You know, I never attack political parties, but I will, when it's a specialist area that I believe in, attack a policy. And I put my head above on energy and was very vocal on the fact that I thought that people may die this winter unless we started to put some protections in place. And obviously the zombie government we had in the summer was devastating for not making a decision in time, and the structure of the way that operated was devastating. And you question, how far do I go? How much is that getting big P political? Small P political I'm fine with. Big P political I'm not, party political. And it is a very difficult line to tread, to be honest. When you believe in something passionately, and it's not agendaed against a party. I've worked with all parties, and often do, and it works very well, and I find most people are really receptive. But sometimes you will be seen as being pushing one way or the other, and it's difficult.